Dear viewers, thank you for joining us on this edition of the newscast on Équinoxe Television, broadcasting from Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Bable Jonathan. In our top stories in this edition of the news, over 10 houses, food crops and properties have been reduced to ashes in 2 villages in Kambe subdivision, Dongamantum division, northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon. The inferno engulfed the houses few hours ago. We'll bring to you details in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on Équinoxe Television. And the news out of Cameroon, the Appeals Chamber of the International Criminal Court has confirmed the acquittal of former Ivorian President and youth leader Laurent Gbagbo and Charles Blegude, respectively. Details come up next. We begin this newscast out of the Republic of Cameroon. The Appeals Chamber of the International Criminal Court has confirmed the acquittal of Laurent Gbagbo and Charles Blegude in the decision which was read by George Shili Ebue Osuji. Today, the Appeals Chamber of the International Criminal Court indicates that it rejects the prosecutor's appeal and confirms the decision of the trial chamber number 1 in January 2019. The former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo and former youth leader Blegude were acquitted from all charges of crimes against humanity allegedly committed in Ivory Coast in 2010 and 2011. 16 September 2019, the prosecutor filed a notice of appeal against that decision. The appeal chamber has rejected the appeal. Now take a listen to one of the judges who explains that decision of the Appeals Chamber of the International Criminal Court earlier today.
Appeal chamber finds by majority, Judge Abonnez and Judge Bosa dissenting, that the prosecutor failed to demonstrate that the trial chamber erred in law or in procedure, and therefore the prosecutor's second ground of appeal is rejected.
And celebrations have been going on in front of the ICC and back in the home country of the 2 accused, Laurent Gbagbo, former president of Ivory Coast, and Charles Blegude, former youth leader. Celebrations in front of the ICC by supporters of the 2 Ivorian personalities who have been acquitted by the International Criminal Court, and the acquittal of the trial chamber number 1 confirmed by the Appeals Chamber of the ICC earlier today. And celebrations were going on in front of the ICC and also back home in Ivory Coast, in the country's capital Abidjan. Celebrations have equally been going on. We'll bring to you images of that celebration in our subsequent editions of the news. Time for us to now take you to 2 villages in Kambe subdivision, Dongamantum division, northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon, where over 10 houses have been reduced to ashes by wild flames. The flames engulfed the houses few hours ago, and of course inhabitants of the 2 villages are suspecting that the fire came from nearby bush, and a number of material damage has been recorded. Over 10 houses reduced to ashes, including food crops and of course properties of inhabitants of those houses that have been reduced to ashes. We'll keep updating you as far as this is concerned, and we have the images of those houses in the B village and Bijeng in the Dongamantum division, precisely in the Kambe subdivision And you can see the inhabitants of those houses, occupants of those houses whose properties have been reduced to ashes by the wild flames. And information streaming into a newsroom indicates that the fire is suspected to have come from a nearby bush, and of course over 10 houses, as I indicated earlier, have been reduced into ashes in B and Bijeng villages in the Donga Mantum Division, northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon. CRTV General Manager Amadou Vamuke, who was cried out of his incarceration center. He's crying out for help. He says his life is on the line as his cellmates have been diagnosed with COVID-19. They have tested positive for coronavirus. In an open letter to the Minister of Justice of the Republic of Cameroon, Laurent So, the former General Manager of the State Media Corporation, the Cameroon Radio Television, Amadou Vamuke, says a war has been launched against him. For me, Armstrong Sander has more.
In an open letter from his detention room at the Kondenge Maximum Security Prison in Yaoundé, journalist and one-time general manager of the CRTV, Amadou Vamuke, cries in pain and frustration that death is fast approaching him in prison through the coronavirus pandemic. Helplessly writing to Cameroon's Minister of Justice, keeper of the seal, Laurent So, Amadou Vamuke revealed that 2 of his cellmates have contracted COVID-19. He says one of them just returned with suffocating chest pains from a brief spell in hospital, revealing further that according to the suffering detainee, another of their cellmates has remained hospitalized with COVID-19 and has 40% of his lungs damaged. Amadou Vamuke also says a third cellmate of theirs has been admitted in a hospital and placed under medical supervision with COVID-19 symptoms. In total, 3 out of his 8 cellmates have been diagnosed with COVID-19, and the former general manager of the CRTV fears for his life. 71-year-old Amadou Vamuke in his letter voices amazement at what he says is the way the justice minister has declared war on him, and further says he is aware that his open letter could result in him being transferred to an even more inhumane place of incarceration, such as the dreaded State Defense Secretariat. Vamuke says that will mean nothing to him, as he has gone through worse already, given that he has been detained for 1,708 days over embezzlement, whereas he has never embezzled anything. He maintained that his detention is illegal, characterized by a never-ending trial on charges of misusing funds, which he says were all for the benefit of the state media and not his personal benefit. He was general manager of the CRTV between 2005 and July 2016 when he was arrested. While in prison, Reporters Without Borders say Amadou Vamuke suffers chronic ailment, including a neurological condition described as severe. The United Nations, on its part, like Reporters Without Borders, have called for the release of Amadou Vamuke in different occasions.
Human Rights Watch and Transparency International revealed in a report how many destined for the management of the fight against the coronavirus pandemic has not been well managed by Cameroon and some other African countries. Human Rights Watch and Transparency International have published a report detailing how there have been irregularities in the management of COVID-19 funds in the Republic of Cameroon, and these organizations say the Cameroon government has also failed to respect its pledge to give frequent and transparent accountability on how the COVID-19 money, notably from the IMF, is being managed. Details in this report by Innocent.
Facing the COVID-19 pandemic and funds management in Cameroon, Human Rights Watch and Transparency International recall that in April 2020, the Health Minister announced a 58 billion franc CFA response plan, and on May 4, the International Monetary Fund (IMF) approved a $256 million emergency loan to help finance it. In October, the IMF approved a second $156 million loan to finance a more robust $825 million 3-year package to support the country's health system and help businesses and households affected by the pandemic. As part of the May loan, the Cameroonian government pledged to use the funds transparently and committed to issuing semi-annual reports on COVID-19 spending, commission an independent audit, and publish documents related to results of public procurement and beneficial ownership information of companies awarded contracts. From the beginning, virtually no public information was provided regarding the government's COVID-19 spending. Healthcare centers made urgent appeals for support from an emergency health fund, into which they have been paying 10% of their revenues since 1993, according to medical staff whom Human Rights Watch interviewed from various regions in April and May. But they said they had received no support. The government does not publish any information about the fund and did not respond to a Human Rights Watch letter regarding it. The president established a second solidarity fund and appealed to private companies and citizens to contribute, but that fund was also not transparent. In interviews with Human Rights Watch, medical staff reported shortages in basic hospital goods. Based on over a dozen interviews Human Rights Watch conducted, hotels received only very partial or no compensation for their costs. The government has not published any information regarding its contracts with or reimbursement to such hotels. After public pressure, the Health Ministry, citing Agency of Transparency, published a 2-page statement on July 29th about how it spent about 22 billion francs CFA, which it said was its total expenditure to respond to COVID-19 in the preceding 5 months. It included only vague categories that provide no real possibility for the public to verify. Before the IMF approved a second emergency loan, it required the government to change its rule to enable it to publish beneficial ownership information of companies awarded contracts and to publish the backlog of all COVID-19 related contracts awarded since May 4, including the beneficial ownership. In practice, however, the government never uploaded this information into a central database. Instead, it produced a list of the names of companies awarded contracts, beneficial owners, and the contract amount, but there are no links to that document on any government website. The only link appears to be on page 47 of an IMF loan agreement. With regards to the commitments to conduct an independent audit, the state agency, Contrôle Supérieur de l'État du Cameroun, has reportedly begun an audit, and the finance minister has called for tenders for an independent audit. As concerns recommendations of Human Rights Watch and Transparency International, good governance, including anti-corruption efforts, should be at the heart of rebuilding resilient and inclusive economies, particularly as governments are looking to bolster spending on health, social protection, and other fundamental rights while reducing inefficiencies in spending and raising revenues.
Workers of the electricity production company in Cameroon have gone on strike in the Bafoussam West region of the country. They are notably field workers of the company in Bafoussam, and they've said they will not return to work until their 6 months salary arrears is paid. Smanjikan Gabriel has more.
Workers of the company in charge of production and distribution of energy in Cameroon are angry. The workers blocked the main entrance of the enterprise in Bafoussam, West Region on Tuesday, demanding for better working conditions. They are asking for the payment of their old salaries and the regularization of their situation with social insurance fund.
We want salary and we want somebody to solve our problem for CMPS.
We need our salaries and they should solve our problems with the CMPS. If these our problems are not solved, no work. We have to start reading matters from April 4th. No one will go to work. We have been manipulated for long.
They don't manipulate me for long and the grade for stop today. Now why that way we would be outside? Even now, better would die.
We do field work, and as a woman, I can't drive a motorcycle, so I spend 5,000 francs per day. It's enough. With unpaid salaries, we can't continue. Apart from the non-payment of the salaries, they also complained of the lack of medical bonuses. In an attempt to save the face of the enterprise, the regional delegate of ENIO for the West and Northwest regions went to calm down the tempers.
Vous êtes le bras d'ENIO sur le terrain. J'ai beaucoup de considération.
You are the hands of ENIO on the field. I have so much consideration for you. Please have some consideration too for me. You didn't submit your complaint with complete elements. Inside, certain things were not said. We are going to ensure that the unpaid salaries are settled. We don't deal directly with you, but now we shall do monitoring on the field because you are the eyes of ENIO.
L'utilisation qui est faite des ressources sur le terrain.
Even with the assurance from the regional director of ENIO for the West and Northwest regions, the protesters were not convinced, so some members were choosing for further discussions to search for a lasting solution.
The increase of English-speaking learners in Cameroon's political camp, the Yaoundé, attributed or linked to the Anglophone crisis that has forced many people to escape violence in their areas of residence in the two English-speaking regions to other parts of the country, is now compelling the Roman Catholic Church to increase or extend the boundaries of Collège La Retraite in the nation's capital Yaoundé, and the church is has also launched a project to build a new cathedral in the nation's capital. Immaculate Fobe has more.
His Grace Jean Barger, Archbishop of the Yaoundé Metropolitan Archdiocese, on an inspection visit at the project site for the construction of the St. John Baptist Church, its residential annex, and extension of the Retreat High School building in Eligezwa, Yaoundé. The erection of the buildings, realized by military engineers and financed by the Yaoundé Archdiocese, is already at an execution rate of 40/98% respectively. However, those handling the project are faced with a couple of challenges.
You know, constructing a church or a mosque is different than constructing a house, a residential house. Why? Because a church must stand the time, must stay for longer. That here we can't work on Sunday, since you are working for the diocese, so we can work on Sunday. And also because of the COVID-19 that us knows, we have to reduce the number of workers on the job site.
Given the proximity of the construction site to the Retreat High School, the engineers opted for a suitable timetable, taking into consideration that they are in a learning environment.
Because, okay, since we are doing a lot of noise, so working during classes mean we will disturb the student when they are at class. So what we do is that from 7 to 3 o'clock we are doing works that they cannot produce noises. So after 3 we have to work until midnight.
According to the Archbishop, the extension of the Retreat High School building will be able to give an opportunity to students to study in a comfortable environment.
On this morning, I have visited 2 constructions doing by the militaries. First of all, our Collège de la Retraite. The things are going very well, and I'm very satisfied for the expertise of the militaries. We hope to continue this project and to enable our school to be with great capacity.
The extension comes after a decision of church officials to transform the school into a bilingual school. And for the church project, it will be able to foster the growth of evangelization in and out of Yaoundé.
Recap of our major stories: about 10 houses reduced into ashes by wild flames in the B and Bijeng villages in Kambe, Donga Mantum Division, Northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon. The houses caught flames few hours ago, and inhabitants of the villages are suspecting that the flames could have come from a nearby bush, and enormous material damages in terms of food crops and belongings of occupants of those houses has been recorded in that part of the country. B and Bijeng villages witnessing an incident, a fire incident, which is said to have emanated from a nearby bush and reducing about 10 houses into ashes. And in news out of the country, we talked about Laurent Gbagbo, former president of Ivory Coast and former youth leader Blé Goudé, whose acquittal has been confirmed by the Chamber of Appeals of the International Criminal Court, and in the decision which was read by Judge Chile Eboué Osuji today, the Appeals Chamber of the International Criminal Court indicates that it rejects the prosecutor's appeal and confirms the decision of the trial chamber number 1. In January 2019, the former Ivorian president Laurent Gbagbo and former youth leader Blé Goudé were acquitted from all charges of crimes against humanity allegedly committed in Ivory Coast in 2010 and 2011. 16 September 2019, the prosecutor filed a notice of appeal against that decision, and the appeal has been simply rejected by the appeal chambers of the International Criminal Court. Now we round up with these information zooming into our newsroom from Niger, where security sources say an attempted coup has been thwarted following heavy gunfire overnight close to the presidential palace. A group of soldiers who are said to have masterminded the assault have been arrested. The attack comes 2 days before President-elect Mohamed Bazoum is due to be sworn in. It will be the first transfer of power between two democratically elected presidents in Niger since the country became independent in 1960. Following Mohamed Bazoum's election in February this year, there have been increasing attacks by jihadist groups and political tensions in the country. His rival Mohamed Ousmane has rejected the result, and his supporters were earlier banned from holding a protest today in the capital, Niamey. And this is where we end this edition of the news on Équinoxe Television. Équinoxe will be yours in some few minutes with Duval Fangwa. Stay with us.